In 1177, Baldwin IV, sick and condemned, marched with 500 knights to challenge Saladin's 26,000. Montgisard would not be a battle, it would be a rupture, where faith, urgency, and strategy tried to defeat mathematics. The leper king did not seek glory, he sought to stop the future. And sometimes stopping the future demands dying while trying. Saladin advanced with certainty of victory. Baldwin advanced, knowing that conviction weighs more than steel. Before the charge there was no hope, only a choice. And choice, when heavy, crushes fear more than weapons do. Baldwin knew he could not rely on stamina. He turned his own limits into strategy. Every mile toward Montgisard was torture, but turning back meant extinction. Winning was not about surviving the day, it was about deciding what deserved to die first, fear or the kingdom. Saladin's army swept the land like a tide, confident and expanding. But confidence without caution becomes vulnerability. Numbers only matter when discipline remains intact. On that day, overconfidence marched faster than cavalry, and it ran even faster when fear returned. When Baldwin ordered the forced march, the Templars carried him like an altar. They knew the arithmetic was suicide, 500 against 26,000. But arithmetic cannot command the heart. Montgisard would not be defense, it would be collision. Baldwin aimed not to resist, he aimed to interrupt. At dawn, the fog concealed the impossible. The Muslim army was scattered across miles. The window was brief. If Baldwin struck now, he could turn abundance into fragmentation. If he hesitated, Jerusalem would fall. The leper king chose the blow that history would feel forever. The advance began like metallic whisper, then thunder. Lances leveled, hooves roared, and reality bent. Muslim chroniclers describe terror, Christian ones, divine intervention. Neither side disagrees on one thing. 500 men moved, as if the world depended on them. And it did. As the knights crested the ridge, Saladin mistook them for scouts. Only when banners aligned, Jerusalem and the Templars, did certainty falter. Doubt is silent, but once it speaks, armies listen. Confidence cracked, and through the crack, Baldwin entered. Baldwin would not fight for endurance, he would fight for interruption. He needed seconds, not hours. Montgisard became psychological warfare masked as cavalry assault. The goal was not to destroy bodies first, but to paralyze minds. The Templars formed the spear's point, warriors who preferred death over retreat. Their reputation preceded their blades. They did not ride to break lines, they rode to break the concept of resistance. Terror moved with them like wind under cloaks. The king raised his bandaged hand. Witnesses swore it shimmered in the sunlight. Baldwin chose the only impossible option: advance. History does not reward the safe. It remembers the unreasonable. When the charge struck, the ground responded like thunder. A massive army hesitates for a second. A decisive army needs one. Montgisard was not decided by power, but by synchronization. When 500 share conviction, they strike like a single will. Saladin ordered formation, but formation requires time, and time was what Baldwin denied. Communication became a battlefield of its own. A command shouted into panic becomes nothing but breath, and breath is too soft to stop steel. Impact felt less like force and more like invasion. The Templars did not collide and withdraw, they collided and continued. Their purpose was penetration, cutting through ranks to strike the mind of command. Victory began in the head, not in the chest. Retreat is not cowardice, it is contagion. The Muslim lines receded inches, then feet, then yards. Once motion loses direction, it becomes collapse. Montgisard did not witness a rout. It witnessed psychological erosion. Baldwin, strapped to the saddle, directed not like a commander, but like someone negotiating with death. He had no strength to waste, so every order was a blade. Where healthy kings plan, dying kings decide, and decision is sharper than iron. Saladin's army did not lose because it lacked force. It lost because it lost belief. Baldwin fought for the moment, Saladin for the future. On that day, the moment defeated the future. And sometimes, that is enough to change history. With every step forward, Saladin's numerical advantage became a burden. Too many men, too many directions, too little cohesion. A scattered force is not an army, it is weight without will. Baldwin turned chaos into a weapon. While the enemy tried to remember how to fight, 500 men remembered why they could not afford to forget. The Mamluks, trained to face any threat, hesitated when they realized the charge would not slow. They knew the difference between bravery and inevitability. This was not courage. It was inevitability in motion. When thought trembles, the body follows. Montgisard punished hesitation more than it punished wounds. Later reports say commanders tried to reorganize routes mid-battle. But you cannot organize a fire while you are inside it. Archers blocked cavalry. Cavalry blocked infantry. Infantry blocked retreat. No formation survives when fear outruns command. The collapse was not physical first, it was architectural. The structure of discipline caved in. Baldwin commanded like a man aware his body was expiring by the hour. He could not prolong the fight, so he compressed it. A healthy king thinks in campaigns. A dying king thinks in decisions. Montgisard was not a campaign, it was a decision executed at sword point. Legacy replaced stamina, precision replaced strength. At that moment, the Templar advance became more than a physical strike. It became a message. They were not clearing space, they were carving doubt. Their objective was not ground, but morale. When conviction collapses, numbers cannot hold a shield. The first thing Montgisard killed was not soldiers. It killed certainty. Saladin still tried to restore his lines. But war is not fought on maps. It is fought on reactions. Words shouted into panic become mere noise. Flags raised above fear lose their meaning. Once the center falters, the body no longer listens to the brain. An army without a voice becomes a giant without a soul. The Christians, despite exhaustion, accelerated. They knew the price of slowing down. Survival was no longer behind them, it was in front of them. They were not winning because they struck harder, but because they struck sooner. History only remembers the force that acts, not the one that waits. Delay is a kind of defeat. Dust rose like a veil. Through it, Baldwin remained upright, tied to the saddle, sword raised. To those present, it did not look human. It looked inevitable. A king who should not stand, standing. A man who should not fight, fighting. Contradiction is the birthplace of myth, and that day a myth advanced on horseback. The Muslim flank buckled first, not from casualties, but from belief. Confidence is oxygen. When it runs out, breathing becomes panic. Perception created the battlefield before steel did. An army that believes it is surrounded behaves like it is, even when it isn't. Montgisard proved that fear can be a strategist. Baldwin recognized the invisible shift. The moment when battle becomes collapse, he did not regroup, he accelerated. The leper king did not fight for territory, he fought for momentum. And momentum, once owned, becomes a weapon sharper than any blade. The collapse of Saladin's formation began before the retreat. It began in the mind. As the Muslims tried to withdraw, the terrain betrayed them. Ravines that looked like pathways became traps. Horses jammed, shields collided, entire units funneled into choke points. The land itself chose a side. Geography became blade. The battlefield did not host the outcome. It enforced it. Fear began to manifest like a presence, not an emotion. Witnesses said men swore something was behind them, even when nothing was visible. But something was, the consequence of hesitation. The 500 did not pursue bodies, they pursued morale. Numerical strength without structure is simply potential energy waiting to collapse. Saladin called for his personal guard to restore control. But even the elite understood the weight of that moment. They had seen skilled armies fall, but they had never seen certainty fall. Retreat was not decision, it was instinct. Instinct reveals what discipline hides, and their instinct screamed. Baldwin's body failed, but his command sharpened. His illness removed hesitation. There was no future to preserve, only a present to force into shape. A general fights for victory. A dying king fights for meaning. Meaning hits harder. In the center, the Templars carved through formations not like a spear, but like an argument. They did not charge to break ranks. They charged to break confidence in ranks. Once disbelief enters the line, formation becomes costume. Armor cannot cover doubt. Archers fired into allies by accident. Cavalry collided with their own infantry. Orders contradicted each other. The sophisticated machine of conquest became a collection of trapped parts. Panic is not loud, it is mechanical. It dissolves systems from the inside. Baldwin remained upright not by strength, but by refusal. Every command sounded like negotiation with his own mortality. He did not lead like a king. He led like a verdict. A reminder that sometimes the body loses before the will does. And sometimes the will drags the body further anyway. Montgisard reached its irreversible stage. It was no longer a battle of blades, but of conclusions. The Muslims still had numbers, but not direction. The Christians had little left, but what they had was momentum, and conviction is a multiplier. Saladin realized the cost of staying was greater than the cost of fleeing. A sultan's capture is a kingdom's fracture. Survival became strategy. He retreated, not out of weakness, but out of responsibility. But perception does not care about intention. The field saw retreat, and retreat became symbol. From there, Montgisard ceased to be contest and became testimony. It proved that faith, fear, terrain, timing, and leadership can bend arithmetic. The impossible did not triumph by accident. It triumphed because the improbable was executed with precision. Baldwin did not win because he was stronger. He won because he refused to let the future arrive. The decisive moment came when Saladin's personal guard understood the scale of collapse. They were no longer protecting a commander. They were trying to survive their own downfall. Retreat was not strategy, it was instinct, and instinct reveals truth. The army that began the day as a sea of lances ended as a stream trying to escape a tide that no longer belonged to them. The battlefield became a cage. Ravines that looked like exits were traps. Men pushed into each other, armor scraping, horses stumbling, shields locking bodies in place. Strength became obstruction. The ground that promised victory turned executioner. Montgisard did not witness surrender. It witnessed compression, a giant crushed by its own mass. The Templars continued cutting through the confusion, like an argument no one could answer. They did not push the enemy back. They pushed the enemy inward. Pressure turned to implosion. Baldwin no longer fought for the kingdom. He fought for the seconds that would give the kingdom breath. Seconds became the currency of survival. Chronicles described this phase with words like unreal, impossible against logic. The Christians were few, but they moved with direction. The Muslims were many, but moved without consensus. War is never only steel, it is belief. And at Montgisard, belief migrated from one army to the other like a tide changing sides. When Saladin mounted a camel to escape faster, the moment became myth. Leadership is not only command, it is perception. And perception fled with him. It did not matter why he left. It mattered that he did. His absence turned coordination into vacancy. His retreat became a sentence, and sentences linger longer than wounds. The 500 pursued as far as their exhausted bodies allowed. They no longer fought for Jerusalem. They fought for definition. They wanted history to know that they did not survive by chance, but by refusal. At Montgisard, will outperformed strength, and will, when sharpened, becomes weapon. Silence followed the collapse like smoke after fire. There was no celebration, only realization. Even victory felt heavy. The cost was visible on every face. This was not triumph, it was reprieve. a narrow doorway carved out of catastrophe, held open by those willing to die in it. Baldwin, still strapped to his saddle, demanded order. His body, ruined by disease, betrayed him at last. But his voice did not. Command outlived strength. He had not saved Jerusalem forever. He had bought time. Time is the most expensive currency in history, and he had purchased it at full price. Historians would call Montgisard a miracle, but miracles are only recognized after survival. Those who lived through it did not feel divine intervention. They felt exhaustion, fear, and disbelief. Yet something had happened that broke the rhythm of inevitability. The future flinched. That is the closest the world ever comes to the supernatural. Baldwin did not defeat Saladin's empire. He delayed it, and delay is sometimes victory. Kingdoms do not always need eternity. They need continuation, a year, a season, a breath. Montgisard granted all three. History does not reward forever. It rewards interruption. Baldwin interrupted destiny long enough to be remembered. As dusk covered the field, what remained was not glory, but consequence. The dead outnumbered the living by a measure no chronicle could soften. Survivors rode at the edge of collapse. Baldwin was carried, barely conscious. He had commanded beyond his body's limits. The kingdom stood because he did not. Montgisard proved that strength is not mass, but management of fear. The Muslims were not weaker, they were destabilized. The Christians were not stronger, they were synchronized. When will aligns, numbers fracture. When conviction holds, fear scatters. It was not the best army that won, it was the most certain. For years after, commanders on both sides hesitated before assuming victory by numbers. Baldwin had changed more than a battle. He had edited confidence itself. He became proof that a leader can win without time, health, or balance, as long as he has purpose. Purpose is the architecture of miracles. Montgisard became memory, a moment where the dying defeated the living, where the few overtook the many, where a king who should have fallen remained upright long enough to bend history. Baldwin did not outrun death. He negotiated with it, and death, for a moment, stepped aside. If this story moved you, comment what struck you the most about this battle. Leave a like, share this video, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Your voice keeps these stories alive and helps history echo beyond the battlefield.